It's just a stats. Reggie Johnson, Eugene Morgan coming to you from Love City of Atlanta, Georgia. And Eugene, we have a interesting situation here when it comes to the cap and the correlation between Super Bowl championships and caps, because we talk about this a lot on the show. Welcome to the Just the Stats on our YouTube page, TikTok, Spotify, wherever you may be listening, wherever you may be watching. We definitely appreciate it. And we've talked a lot of times on the show about how the money spent equates to the trophies won. And we could see, if we were talking a little bit of baseball here, how that's not working out for the New York Mets this year.
Right.
Sometimes the money you spend, there's a direct correlation between the money you spend and how much you're going to be winning. And which is interesting because you think, and it's kind of like metaphor for life, so to speak, right? In the sense of not everything that is high cost is going to be better for you, right?
Right.
Have you ever been to a restaurant, Eugene, and you're paying out the ass for this meal, man? And they bring you like 3 pieces of lettuce and some squiggled dressing on a plate. And you're like, man, I could have just went to McDonald's, man, grabbed me a Big Mac and fries, man. It'd been perfect.
Yeah. It was funny. We were out of town. I was in training 2 weeks ago, and these people kept recommending the steak place, and we went there. I didn't pay for it, so it wasn't on my dime. But I would have been mad if I would paid for it, because it's been steak that I can make. I could have made the steak at home, and I would have been fine with it. But if I'm going somewhere and I'm paying top price for a prime, prime rib or whatever, or prime, just a nice cut steak, I want that thing to be like, I want to taste it and just melt. This was not it.
Right. It needs to be perfection, right?
Yes.
For that money spent. I could have bought like 30 of my own steaks for this price, So you do see some correlations between that and the NFL here. The first slide we're going to talk about is our highest player salary cap the last 10 seasons. Let's see if we can go. Let's go full screen here for this, man. Let's go full screen.
Let's do it.
Let me see. Let's see how I go full screen. That's the first thing, right? We got to see how. Oh, you know what? Let's see here, Eugene. Let's go up to the top here. Let's go. Boom. There we go. We are full screen now for the people here. Now, what's interesting here is, like, you look at the highest player caps here, and there is not as necessarily a correlation to being having the highest paid player on your team and having success as a team throughout the season. Now we'll get to Super Bowl, how this correlates to Super Bowls later on here in the show. But I'm going to go through this for some of the podcast audience if they can't see what's going on here. So at 2013, Eli Manning was the highest paid. Giants are 7-9. Ndamukong Suh, and this is cap hit actually. So some of these players had the highest paid and the highest cap hit, but they're not always the same thing. Just so the audience knows, they can be different. Ndamukong Suh, 2014, the Lions went 11-5. That's pretty good. Drew Brees, 2015, Saints 7-9. Maybe he got injured there. I'm not sure, because Drew Brees didn't really have a lot of losing seasons, Eugene. No, so that might have been maybe there's an injury situation there, right? Eli Manning, 2016. The Giants, of course, 11-5. Joe Flacco, 2017, 9-7. That's pretty good. You got a few winning seasons in there, and this is kind of where things turn the corner here, because 2017 is going to be the last year where you had the highest paid player and winning record. Jimmy G, and we all know Jimmy G's had some nagging injury issues. Jimmy G. Highest cap, 2018, 49ers, 4-12. Matthew Stafford, 2019, Lions, 3-12-1. That one is always interesting. We didn't done them any favors anyway. It would have been 4-12 even if that was a win. Dak Prescott, 2020, Cowboys, 6-10. Russell Wilson, 2021, Seahawks, 7-10. And Ryan Tannehill, well, that's interesting, right? Ryan Tannehill, 2022, with the Titans, 7-10. And I think Ryan Tannehill also has some injury issues in there as well.
That Jimmy G and Ryan Tannehill's years were both injury years.
Yeah, and then Russell was injured 3 games in that 2021 season as well. And Stafford, when you go back to the Lions, he had an injury in that season as well. So I guess there's definitely a correlation between health. Because you're getting paid, the more your cap hit may be a certain way, it doesn't mean that that's gonna keep you healthier, keep you on the field, or spell good fortunes for your team. What's your thoughts on that, Eugene?
Well, I mean, I know Flacco's he came off the Super Bowl win, so of course he
Yes,
gets
he
his
bet on
money.
himself, man. Remember
Bet on
that was a
himself.
bet on that was a bet on self year.
Yeah. At least I can the Eli years, at least he won a Super Bowl. Drew won a Super Bowl. It's like when you get down to, and we know Stafford went to the Rams, won a Super Bowl, but you get down to the Tannehills, the Dax, and Jimmy G's, and I know Jimmy took the Niners to the Super Bowl, but when you get starting to that, man, and you're paying a top dollar for Sue. I love him. I think he's great, but that's for a defensive guy. He should never be your highest paid player on a cap. Sorry, cap or whatever. So it's I can forgive them. You can always forgive. You can always squint and forgive when you win Super Bowl with the guys. But man, when you're paying Tannehill and Dak and Jimmy G, Flacco came off the Super Bowl, but man, you kind of paying
Yeah,
top dollar for a
Flacco,
lot of guys who
they were
didn't win
forced
Super
to
Bowl.
pay Flacco, right?
Yeah, they didn't have
And
a choice.
it's interesting that you say that when you bring up the Ndamukong Suh point, because you're looking here at, if you look at this list, and this is going back the last 10 seasons here, there's only one guy. I'm looking at this list. I think he's the only person that's not a quarterback on this list. All nine out of the 10 on this list are quarterbacks.
Yeah, he's like it. He's the only one.
That's interesting. But I think that when you go back to that Lions year, was Matt was already there. Stafford was already there, right? It was only 2014. Stafford was there already.
Stafford was still there.
It's interesting. It'd be interesting to see what if Stafford, maybe he was on a rookie situation. Maybe he had already signed, so his cap hit wasn't as bad. Because you know, sometimes when people sign these new deals, that cap hit might not come into play for a couple of years down the line. Like it could be a situation where they're not seeing a massive cap hit in that first year, but then as you get into that second, third, fourth year, whatever the length of that contract is, it becomes more punitive as down the line. You know, that's why a lot of guys rework their contracts.
Right. And a lot of these contracts, these early contracts, these 2013s, these were before the rookie contracts were implemented.
Which is crazy, right? Because when you go back to that time, ladies and gents, if people weren't paying attention back then, you had complete rookies, $40-50 million contracts as soon as they got signed. And then the guy that you had there was making like 30.
Yeah. Matt Ryan was he was one of the last ones that got one of those really nice contracts when he came out of college.
Yeah, we came out of BC, and then your boy, I think Sam Bradford, I think was maybe the last. I want to say
Sam Bradford, I think was one of the last ones. Yes, that's probably the reason why they changed the rules. I mean,
Sam Bradford situation. They're like, enough is enough.
Enough is enough. I mean, there was definitely some other ones, but he's got to be one of the poster boys. He's not by himself. Well, there's definitely some other guys to be on there with him.
Well, we have the highest team caps here over the last 10 seasons here. Let's talk about the correlation here between a winning record over the last 10 seasons and your team payroll, so to speak. So 2013, the Chiefs went 11-5, $137 million. 2014, the Bills went 9-7 at $148 million, and that's the payroll. 2015, the Jets 10-6, $153 million. 2016, the Raiders 12-4 at $164. 2017, the Panthers 11-5 at $175. 2018, the 49ers 4-12. At $199, man, goodness. Man, you were talking about the Mets, man. That's horrible. But maybe there's an injured year. For them. I don't. Maybe that's a correlation there between a Jimmy G injured year and that cap. They turned that around in 2019 with a 13-3 record. The 49ers did at $221 million. 2020, the Colts 11-5, $231. 2021, the Jets 4-13 at $206. And 2022, the Jaguars 9-8 at $231. When I look at that Jaguars, I'm interested. Did they take on a lot? I remember they gave Christian Kirk a massive deal there, right?
Yeah, they were signing.
Travis Etienne was a rookie.
They did sign a bunch of receivers too. So, yeah.
Lawrence still on his rookie. Did he re-up?
He's still on his rookie contract.
So what is that going to go to when it's time for him to re-up?
It's going to be pretty good since they had a great season. This is they went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs last year. And let's see, we'll have to see what they have to do this year. But it's funny, if you look at this list, look at all the smart teams that are on this list that spend the money the right way. Look at the Chiefs, the Bills, the Niners. I know they had that bad. The 2018 year was an injury year for Jimmy G, but not that 2019 year Super Bowl appearance. Look at all the bad teams that have been just. Oh, you would not surprise the Raiders on here, the Panthers.
Yeah.
The Jets. So it's not surprising that some of these teams that have the Irish team have better success because they just have success all around.
That's an interesting point because a lot of teams, it does kind of lend itself to saying that if you do pay a certain amount of money, um, if you do pay a certain amount of money in the NFL, there can be a correlation there, right? Between
Yeah.
success, because when you look at these teams, we have going back the last 10 seasons here, one, two, literally two of these teams with the 49ers
Mm-hmm.
and the Jets are the only two teams, 2018 49ers, which we think is probably a Jimmy G injury year, or to go back and
That's
look at
the
that for
Jimmy
sure.
G
But
injury
it's
year.
it's
Yep.
it's
Yes, that's
unfortunately with Jimmy G, you could probably say that most years and be accurate. And if you were to say that was a Jimmy G injury year, unfortunately, that's most of Jimmy G's years. So I'm going to safely assume that was what it was for the 49ers. And if maybe he wasn't, because he tends to win when he plays. So I would assume that they would have had a winning season that year especially since in 2019 they went 13-3, right? I would assume that he
right.
would have had a pretty good year if he had played, and that would have made it 9 out of the 10 teams, which is almost, I mean, even 8 is pretty solid. It's not saying that you're going to win a Super Bowl by any stretch of the imagination, right? But at least it's a situation where you can say if you spend the money, there is a correlation between winning games, right? So you don't have like the lowest payroll, and maybe there's a happy median there. And as we'll see with some of these slides as we go down the line here, maybe there's a happy median there. But at the end of the day, this is kind of an advocate for spending the money, right?
Right, but spend it smart. Like invest in your scouting, invest in those guys, invest in your, not only your GMs but your assistant GMs. That whole the whole side that nobody wants to talk about that. But those are and that's why you can see the Chiefs. They're just a smart organization from the top to the bottom. The Niners have
Right.
always. You could probably. I can't remember. That 4-12. Yeah, you can't remember that 4-12 because 19 washes it away. It's not like they stick around and losing time. They're not sticking down the gutters for a long time, like the Jets, like the Jaguars. Like, you're not surprised. Oh, the Jaguars. They're not just because they just recently, they finally turned their fortunes around. And the Jets, you can still. It's still in question. We're not giving the Jets the Super Bowl ring. Because they still have to win in the AFC. The Jets still have to go through Mahomes. They still have to go through Herbert. So that might come back to bite them. That might just be a wild card team for all we know. So it's funny, like those teams that you just see on here. It's like the ones that are smart, they don't stick around. That they may spent money, but next year around they right the ship.
Yeah, and it's got to be depressing to spend the money and not get that correlation, right? To spend the
Yes.
money, like we've done everything right. I'm not a cheap owner. From an owner perspective, I'm not a cheap owner. I went out, I spent the money,
Right.
and not every season is going to end in a Super Bowl. But can we at least just not suck? Is
Yeah.
that possible, Eugene?
Right.
Is that
Can
possible
we
that we can
be
spend the money and not suck?
at least 800 and be 500 or above? That's all you want. A chance at least go to the playoffs. At least you're hoping to get back to that. At least to that promised land. Okay. At least if you get to the playoffs, you kind of know what you are. You know what's going on there. But yeah, you're right. Let's not suck. That's what we hope for.
So speaking of, I don't want to say speaking of sucking, but it is. But these teams do kind of suck. Let's go to the lowest team salary cap over the last 10 seasons. And we'll start in 2013 with the Redskins, then Washington Commanders. Now 3-13 at 107 million. 2014, the Jets 4-12 at 118 million. 2015, the Giants at 6-10 at 128 million. 2016, the Browns at 1-15. Oh, brutal. 130 million. They weren't spending no money. The Jets, 2017 Jets, 5-11. The Jets make a few appearances on this list, unfortunately. The 2017 Jets, 5-11, 145 for them. 2018, Colts at 10-6, 144. 2019, the Chiefs at 12-4. And this is the anomaly, right? These 2 years are the anomaly, 2018 and 2019. Chiefs 12-4, Super Bowl for them, 167. Interesting. Interesting. That was Pat Mahomes still on that rookie contract there, which seems to be the way to win these days. 2020, the Jets 2-14 at 182. 2021, the Seahawks 7-10 at 173. And it was the Browns last year at 7-10. 2022 season, the Browns 7-10 at 187. So when you look at this correlation, Eugene, it's kind of like the opposite of what we just looked at, right? When you look at this correlation, if you have the lowest payroll in the NFL, only 2 teams in the last 10 seasons have winning records.
Yeah.
2018 Colts and 2019 Chiefs. You can't always bet. If you're not going to spend any money, you can't bet on Patty Mahomes coming through there to save you. It's only happened once in the last 10 seasons. You can't bet on a guy like that to be there. What are your thoughts on this?
Again, look at your number one team. The 2013 the Redskins, the Commanders,
the dumpster fire.
I mean,
dumpster fire of a team.
Yeah. I mean, that's just speaks right there. They've been that way, and hopefully, good thing for them. They got new ownership, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, man, it's a new page, it's a new day.
New page. They can just move on. But the Browns, I mean, not surprised from last year. You know, they dumped all that money into Deshaun's, and I guess we can see where they're going to be this year. They've got good talent, at least around that team.
Deshaun's got to take there's got to be a step there, bro. There's got to be a step there for him, right?
But the Jets again, the Giants. Again, at least if you're the Giants, you can go, well, at least we won Super Bowls. You know, we can say we won the Super Bowl at least in the last decade, and so at least they won 2 to be exact. So, but the Jets, I mean, at least the Colts, they won that Super Bowl, but yeah, you can just see why. You can see why the teams around here that have those ones are probably the ones that just keep having dumpster fire types of teams, and the ones that know how to spend their money. Like the Chiefs, what did they do in 2019? No, they had one of those payrolls, and went to Super Bowl at the same time because they had Patrick Mahomes, and they're just smart. They are a smart organization.
Smart teams, yes,
like the Seahawks as well. They don't hang around. When the writing was on the wall, they got rid of Russell Wilson. It was time, right? And now they're one of the favorites to win the West this year. So it's
which is very interesting, right? A Geno Smith led team,
Geno,
right?
Who
would ever thought that?
Who never in a million years would have bet that one at all. But that's, again, you could see the smarter franchises. You're like, oh, I don't remember the Chiefs. You don't remember Seahawks having a losing season because it was washed because they come back the next year and they turn it around, or they don't stick around that long. Like the Jets, the Deadskins. Let's call them the Deadskins because that's what they've been the last.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's hilarious.
Right? They just been that way. So I mean, I'm not surprised they're just one of the top teams because they just every year they reach for the guy, and rather than take the best available guy, they're the one team that talks themselves in. We're the smart organization. No, you're not. The Chiefs, the Colts, the Seahawks, those are smart organizations. And even the Giants, they don't, like I said, they don't stick around there too long either. Like they know how to they're not scared of throwing the towel. Like, okay, let's start this over and let's get this thing rolling the right way. Versus like the Browns will keep rolling in skins, and they'll just keep living mediocrity forever.
I noticed the Browns and the Jets are occupying 50% of this list. For people who don't want to do the math, I'll go let you know there that the Jets and the Browns are occupying half this list is the Jets and the Browns. So there's got to be some. I could probably extrapolate this out another 20 years, and we probably see more appearances by them on these lists. At some point, it's got to be the organization. And one team you don't see on this list is the Patriots. As much you want to say that Tom Brady did help them, but you don't see them on this list for the later years when he was gone either. So it's kind of like your better ran organizations tend to be better ran organizations. Your organizations that are a little bit suspect. Hopefully the Jets win for this year. I kind of like what the Jets are doing this year. Maybe they're turning a corner there, Eugene. Maybe it's a chance for the Jets to get themselves off of lists like this where they're just not paying anybody and at the same time not winning any games. Right. And we'll actually see Aaron Rodgers kind of bring them bring them out, so to speak. You know what I mean? Bring them out of the football hell that they seem to have been in after Sanchez left. Now, this is the one that we were all been waiting for.
There it is.
How does your Super Bowl chances increase when you have the highest or lowest salary cap? So we have we have cap rankings here. That's how we did it for the Super Bowl champions here for our podcast audience. We have the cap rankings of the Super Bowl winning team of that particular year and what their cap ranking is from top to bottom. So for example, the 2013 the Seahawks, they had the second highest cap that year at 134. The 2014 Patriots, the seventh highest at 134. The 2015 Broncos, the sixth highest at 145. The 2016 Patriots, the 26th highest at 148. That's a pretty big dip. 2017 Eagles, third highest at 173. 2018 Patriots, the 18th highest at 176. 2019 Chiefs, 32nd highest at 167. 2020 Tampa Bay Bucks, 15th. Thank you, Mr. Tom Brady, I guess, for that at $200 million. 2021 Rams, 23rd highest at 184. And the 2022 Chiefs, 21st highest at 205. You know what's interesting about this list is when you look at let's go back the last 10 years, Eugene, only 4 of these teams are even in the single digits. Only 2 of these teams are in the top 5 highest payrolls.
Right.
So I think that this just goes to show that if you want, I guess I'll sum this up. We'll stay on Super Bowl, and I'll sum this up when we get to the next, to the last slide, and when we're wrapping this up. But I will say that your Super Bowl chances don't increase. What you don't see on here is the number 1, right? You don't see the top paid team in the last 10 years being the highest payroll. As a matter of fact, you do see the 30s. You see the last team with the Chiefs in 2019. So you do have at least one of those, but you don't have a first highest payroll on here at all the last 10 years that have become Super Bowl champions. And another thing, just piggybacking off your point here, Eugene, a lot of these teams are smart ran teams.
Smart ran teams, right?
These teams you don't have any dummy teams on here. You don't have any of those teams sneaking in here. So what are your thoughts here, just overall on the correlation between the cap ranking or your payroll ranking, so to speak, and your Super Bowl winning chances?
Well, you said you hit it right on the head, but I mean, if you look at some of these, you dig deep into them, like we've already said, the Chiefs won that year with Mahomes that was on his rookie contract. But look at
anomaly too, by the way,
right?
An anomaly
again,
for sure.
So they had Kelsey and Hill on that team, right? So
yes,
and now they go what? So what do they do? And this is again, they lost the Super Bowl in 2021. I'm sorry, or was it 2021? They lost that might have been what are your yes. The year they lost to the Bucks.
I think it was 2020. It was 2020.
That's right, 2020. So what do? They went and they said, buy Hill. We're going to take your money and we're going to rebuild the line. And you're right. So they rebuilt that line and made it better because they protected the correct asset. And again, that's what they did. They spent the money wisely. Bucks, you know what? They lost Brady. Brady's not coming back. So what do? Oh, you know what? We're going to sign Baker Mayfield. Who cares, right? We're going to, you know what, that quarterback we drafted, you know, he had a Heisman, or he was in a Heisman race. He was invited. We'll see. We'll see what he can do. But they're not being dumb and going out and getting like, oh, let's get Derek Carr in here. Maybe he can win for us. No, we're gonna suck this year, and we're gonna get one of those awesome quarterbacks coming out next year. Same thing with the Eagles. Eagles did the same thing, right? Won the Super Bowl, and it's like, okay, look, and they just again, kind of the team didn't really. I mean, it kind of just fell apart just because Carson Wentz, you know, he just wasn't him.
Yes, after that fell apart in every destination thereafter as well.
Right, but again, what did they do? Drafted their number 1 quarterback in the second round. What did he do? He took him to the Super Bowl. It's like those little things that they're so smart. And it's like, look at the Patriots. The Patriots are just known for like, hey, they'll sign a flyer guy, a bunch of flyer guys on defense. Because you know, they have one of the best defensive coaches ever in Belichick. And what do? They just keep going back to Super Bowls because again, they had Tom Brady on the cheap contract. So again,
Right.
look every single one of these franchises, and look at your Rams. Rams do not care about draft picks. They do not care. We will
That was the
trade.
year they loaded up, man. That's
Yes.
the year they loaded up with
Yep.
Odell and everybody. They said, "We're going for it, man."
We're going
Yes,
for
they
it. They
got
went for it.
Stafford, and they went for it. Yeah.
Yeah, they got all the draft capital. Like they're going all in this year, and you know what? We might suck for the next few years, but what do we get? The ring out of it, and that's just look at all these teams that just they're constantly always going to be around. I mean, even the Patriots last year. I mean, you're not lying. You know, you're not predicting them to be a Super Bowl, but they're not poorly ran. You know, they're still a 500 team. You know, they're still watchable. Like there's so many teams out like the Browns are just how many years have they been unwatchable? You know, and how many years have
And that fan base,
the
man, shout out to
Commanders
the Browns fan base still
yes
showing up for these
still
teams.
showing
And
up?
same thing too with the Commanders as well. Like
Commanders,
these are storied franchises
right?
that go back into history, right? Storied franchises, and they can't seem
Can't
to
yeah
to get over the hump there,
right.
so to speak. On our last slide here, and this is very fitting that our last slide does have a picture of Tom Brady here.
Yep. Sure.
Because
So
Brady occupied 40% of that last list that we were on.
yeah.
Brady occupied 40% of that list. So it's only right that we have Brady here. And the money, this is just the breakdown of the money that's spent here on franchises as I try to go back to my screen here, which I can't seem to do. Money spent here on franchises from a statistical standpoint. And you know what's interesting here is, and I don't think it's really nothing to see here that your quarterback's usually the highest paid, right? So
Right.
you got your heart. We'll let the people look at the numbers specifically because these numbers kind of ended in 2021. The statistics that are on the screen kind of go up to 2021 here, but I would break down the position by position for our podcast audience here, and it's no secret of where the money's spent, right? You
Yep.
didn't hear it. I mean, this is a quarterback league, right? And that's why a lot of if you're, let's say that you're a novice, you watch football a little bit, but you want to sound like you're knowledgeable to your friends and everything like that. When they're asking you, hey, what kind of season am I going to have? Guys, you don't need to be a football savant to know that if
Yeah.
a team does not have a quarterback,
There
you
you
are
go.
not winning in this league. You're not winning. If your quarterback is not great, not necessarily as Patrick Mahomes showed you, even though he is an anomaly, and the same thing with Tom Brady, he's an anomaly as well. But these players have shown you that you don't necessarily need to be the highest paid quarterback. You don't necessarily need to be the highest paid team, but you damn sure have to have one.
Yes.
And teams recognize this from a money perspective, right? Now, what's interesting here is just the fall off of the running back position, right?
Yeah, that's just but that we've just seen that last few years. That's telling because like you said, if you look at that list, it's your quarterback, your receivers, and your offensive lineman because you got to have someone to throw to, and someone's got to protect them. So
Well, we're not going to pay a quarterback all this money, man, and have his ass getting ran over back there all the time.
Right,
You're going to have to pay somebody to protect the guy, right?
Right, exactly.
Now, what's interesting too is the wide receiver. I really feel like when I was growing up watching football, this is just not the way it was. Like the wide receiver seems to have taken, and not even just from a football standpoint in real life, even from a fantasy standpoint. Back in the day in fantasy football, for fantasy players, you could take, listen, we're gonna worry about, we'll punt on wide receiver. We'll take a wide receiver later.
Yeah, you take two running
Now a
backs.
player, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
You're gonna take those running backs early, right? And there's still some knowledge. There's still some sound advice in that, depending on who the running backs are on any given year. But a player like the Cooper Kupps and I'm missing his name here from Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, Jefferson.
Yeah, Jefferson. Change your life.
Yeah.
Jefferson on your fantasy team will change your life. I'll tell you that, especially if you had him last year. You get some of these key receivers on your team, they're going to change your life. And this is kind of what it's been for the actual teams. Take Jefferson off of the Vikings last year. I don't know if they go off on that 8-9-1 record, whatever they were on. You know, that's because Justin Jefferson was out there being a beast. right?
Yeah,
He's beasting out there. And then you
he
had Adam
was.
Thielen that you could throw it to. You had a couple different players. Even Osborne was getting involved. You have a couple different receivers you could throw it to. It'll change fortune here for your teams. Is there anything in the defensive numbers that surprised you there?
No, you just don't see like I just teams don't I like the idea like you said like we said like what I like what Falcons are doing is spreading the money around on the
Yeah.
defensive side of the ball. Because I've always believed that philosophy. I mean, unless you just have a legit edge guy, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, I just rather have just a bunch of guys. Give me like like the Patriots, man. They just have a bunch of guys on manageable contracts. They don't, and if the one guy goes down, they're not they're not hurt by that. Like when Chase Young went down for the Skins, that was it. I mean, it's not saying they were going to be a top team anyway, but that was their top. That was their top draft pick. Yeah, he's gone. He was gone for that. He was gone that whole year, and it was a knee injury, so it took him almost this past season to get back on the field. Now they're not even going to pick up his fifth-year option. It's like now if he goes somewhere
Wow,
else,
that's depressing, right? Like,
yeah,
you
right.
pretty much just paid a guy to produce for another team if he goes somewhere else and
If he
he's
goes
beasting,
somewhere
right?
else, right? So, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. Just I like you could because you can win with a like you said, be in that 15 and for defense, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
have a good quarterback, if you got a good quarterback, you got a good support system around the quarterback. But if you're number, you can't be 30th, you can't be the last in the
No,
league. But if
no.
you're in that middle ground, if you could just like, hey, look, we just got to stop this one time. This is your one time you got to stop the quarterback, and the 15th ranked defense can do that. They're not stopping you every time, but yeah, I would rather spread that money out and then spend my money on my offense, my offensive line, my quarterback, my receivers. Because you need now, you're like you said, you would punt on a receiver in the day because it was like if I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get one of the top three, well, I'll make it up down with some of
Down
these
the
other
line
guys
somewhere.
somewhere else. Now you're like, oh my god, you've got all these guys. You've got Devontae, you've got Chase. It's like they're
Right. You
gonna
see
sit
chasing them start to come off the board. You're sweating bullets now, right? When
right,
these
right,
guys start to drop off the board and now you're
right.
being left with other guys, now you're sweating it out a bit.
Right, right. And then it's like, okay, and Stephon Diggs, even Stephon Diggs, they're number two
Game
option.
changer, man.
It's like
Game changer, bro.
and they've got two good receivers. Look at the Seahawks. Seahawks have two, and then they drafted well. And it's like now
Oh,
they
unbelievable. You talking about the strength and strength and strength. Who was gonna get the ball there? Like there's only
yeah,
one ball to go around. You got three legit guys in Tyler Lockett, Metcalf, and Jigba.
yeah,
Who
yeah,
there who can change your life. That's interesting. And it is interesting that they went there. I mean, at least he's there for the future. I'm not sure. It felt like that part of the cupboard was not bare.
yeah,
So I'm not sure why they dropped another receiver. But at the end of the day, it's a great one, and we'll see how he pans out. And I think if I'm to sum up all of this and what the episode is about, does money correlate to winning Super Bowls? I don't know that it correlates to winning Super Bowls, but I do know that it correlates to winning in general.
yes,
If you have a low payroll, you're probably not winning. At least of the last 10 seasons, the stats bear out that if you have one of the lowest payrolls, you're not winning in this league. You got to have lightning in the bottle with the Patrick Mahomes situation that the Chiefs did. You got to have something like that happen for you, but literally that's happened one time the last 10 seasons.
right,
And if you're winning, if your payroll is at the top of the list, you may not go to the Super Bowl, but you'll be able to get butts in the seats. You're going to field something a good product on the field. You're going to
right,
be at least maybe around in the postseason. Who knows when you get bounced, but you'll be around. So I do feel like the having a higher payroll correlates to winning seasons, but doesn't necessarily correlate to a Super Bowl. Even though you could say that not having one of the lowest payrolls, I mean, all of the Super Bowl teams, I mean, I guess it's about half and half, Eugene, because when you look at the Super Bowl teams that we had here, one, two, three, four, five, six of those teams, 60% of our list that we had, Eugene, had payrolls that were under 15th, were 15th and lower.
uh huh,
15th and lower. They weren't top 15 payrolls. So, I mean, there's something to that. I guess you don't have to break the bank, but maybe you got to be around it, and then maybe have some good fortune from the injury gods, and
that
have
too.
some of those great players there on your team. This is just a stats. Reggie Johnson, Eugene Warren. Thank you for checking us out here and watching the show wherever you may be watching or listening to the show wherever you may be listening. See you next time. All right, my friend. All right. The most important